The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor. Victoria Blackwell grabbed the young busboy by his collar, her manicured nails digging into his neck. "You worthless piece of trash! Do you know how much that bottle cost?" The boy was crying. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. Then a black man in a waiter's uniform stepped forward. He didn't flinch. He didn't bow. Let him go. Victoria's ice-blue eyes found his name tag. "Marcus, you just ended your career." She didn't know that Marcus Johnson wasn't just a waiter. He was the man holding the match that would burn her empire to ashes. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. They say New York City doesn't care about your past. That's a lie rich people tell themselves so they can sleep at night. The truth? This city remembers everything. Every failure, every fall, every moment you couldn't pay your rent or feed your kid or look yourself in the mirror. Marcus Johnson knew this better than anyone. At 34 years old, he had hands that told his whole story. Calluses from carrying heavy trays, small burns from kitchen accidents, a wedding ring tan line that had finally faded after 3 years. He stood outside the service entrance of the Obsidian, Manhattan's most exclusive private club, adjusting the collar of his cheap polyester uniform. His shift started in 10 minutes. His daughter's school payment was due in 3 days. He had $47 in his checking account. "You ready for tonight?" Marcus turned. Darnell, another server, was lighting a cigarette by the dumpster. Good man. 3 kids, worked 2 jobs. "What's special about tonight?" Darnell laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You don't know? Victoria Blackwell is hosting some big merger dinner. Word is, don't look at her. Don't talk to her. Don't breathe too loud near her." Victoria Blackwell. Marcus knew the name. Everyone in New York knew the name. CEO of Blackwell Industries, the woman who had destroyed more careers than the recession. "She got a busboy fired last month," Darnell continued. "Kid spilled water. Not on her, near her table. She called the general manager at 2 a.m. Kid was gone by sunrise." Marcus said nothing. He had learned to say nothing. "Just keep your head down, brother." Darnell stubbed out his cigarette. "We're invisible to these people. That's how we survive." Invisible. Marcus had been invisible for 3 years now. Sometimes he wondered if he would disappear entirely. The Obsidian was everything Marcus expected from a place where dinner cost more than his monthly rent. The air smelled like money and arrogance. Jazz played softly, barely audible over the hum of powerful people pretending to care about each other's problems. Marcus moved through the room like a ghost. Champagne tray balanced perfectly. Eyes down, shoulders relaxed. He had served senators, movie stars, tech billionaires. They never saw him. They saw the uniform. They saw the tray. They saw a function, not a person. That was fine. That was safe. "Table 7 needs more water, sparkling. And for God's sake, don't speak unless spoken to." Arthur, the floor manager, was sweating. He always sweated when important guests arrived, but tonight he looked like he might have a heart attack. "The Blackwell party?" "Yes. And Marcus?" Arthur grabbed his arm. "Whatever happens, whatever she says, you take it. You understand? You smile and you take it. I can't afford another incident." Marcus looked at Arthur's hand on his arm. Arthur released it quickly. "I understand." He didn't understand, but he needed this job. Marcus approached table 7 with the water pitcher. His peripheral vision took in the scene without appearing to look. The man at the center had to be Alexander Sterling, tech billionaire, green energy pioneer. The tabloids called him New York's golden boy. Up close, he looked tired, bored, like a man trapped in a life he never asked for. And next to him sat Victoria Blackwell. She was beautiful the way a predator is beautiful. Everything about her was sharp, her cheekbones, her jawline, her eyes that seemed to cut through anyone foolish enough to meet them. She wore a red dress that cost more than Marcus's childhood home. Currently, she was berating a young busboy. "I said no ice. No ice. Are you deaf? Are you stupid? Which one is it?" The boy couldn't have been older than 19. His hands were shaking as he held the offending glass. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll get you a new one right away."
"You'll do nothing."
Victoria's voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse.
"You've already proven you're incapable of following simple instructions. Alexander, why do you hire these people? Is there a factory somewhere that produces incompetent servers?"
Alexander Sterling glanced up from his phone. "Victoria, it's just ice. Let him go."
"It's not about the ice, darling. It's about standards. It's about attention to detail. It's about not surrounding ourselves with mediocrity."
The busboy's eyes were wet. He was trying not to cry. Marcus felt something burn in his chest. He knew that feeling. 3 years ago, Marcus had been on top of the world. Corner office at Miller & Ross, 6-figure salary, beautiful wife, 4-year-old daughter who thought her daddy was a superhero. Then he found the fraud. $18 billion hidden in offshore accounts. Wire transfers that didn't add up. A senior partner cooking the books for clients who should have been in prison. Marcus did what he thought was right. He reported it. He gathered evidence. He went to the authorities. And they destroyed him. The partner had connections. The clients had connections. Suddenly Marcus was the problem. Suddenly he was fired for breach of confidentiality. Suddenly no firm in New York would touch him. His wife waited 6 months before she left. Said she didn't sign up for poverty. Said he should have kept his mouth shut like everyone else. She didn't take their daughter. At least there was that. So now Marcus served champagne to people who didn't see him. He helped his daughter Lily with homework every night. He pretended everything was fine because that's what fathers do. But sometimes, watching someone like Victoria Blackwell tear apart a 19-year-old kid for putting ice in a glass, Marcus felt that old fire. The fire that had ruined his life. The fire he couldn't quite extinguish. "Water, sir." "Ma'am." Marcus stepped forward, inserting himself into the silence. The busboy looked at him with grateful, terrified eyes. "Sparkling water for the table?" Victoria's gaze shifted to Marcus. Those ice-blue eyes scanned him like he was a stain on the carpet. "Another one. Do any of you people actually know how to do your jobs?" "We do our best, ma'am." "Your best?" Victoria laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Your best is clearly not good enough. Look at your shoes. They're scuffed. And your uniform. Is that a spot on your collar?" Marcus didn't look down. He kept his eyes level with hers. "I apologize. I'll address it after I serve the table." Victoria tilted her head slightly. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise? Irritation? Most people couldn't hold her gaze for more than a second. "See that you do." She turned back to Alexander. "Now, about the merger timeline." Marcus began pouring water. Alexander's glass first. The man nodded slightly, an acknowledgement that most servers never received. Then Victoria knocked her wine glass. It happened fast. The red liquid arced through the air, heading straight for Alexander Sterling's pristine white shirt. Victoria gasped dramatically. "Oh no! This clumsy waiter bumped the table!" She was lying. Marcus had seen her elbow move. She had knocked the glass deliberately. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the wine. Marcus moved on instinct. He dropped the water pitcher onto a cloth napkin to muffle the sound. His free hand grabbed a folded towel from his belt. He didn't wipe. That would smear the stain. Instead, he intercepted the wine mid-air, catching the liquid in the cloth before it could reach Alexander's chest. The table went silent. Marcus stepped back. His heart was pounding. He had just invaded a billionaire's personal space. Alexander looked down at his shirt. Spotless. He looked at the cloth in Marcus's hand. Soaked red.
Nice reflexes. Victoria's face had gone pale. She stood up so fast, her chair screeched against the floor. "You nearly threw that cloth in his face! You clumsy, incompetent—"
"I saved his shirt, ma'am." The words were out before Marcus could stop them. The entire room seemed to freeze. Conversations died. Silverware stopped moving. Every eye turned toward table 7. Nobody talked back to Victoria Blackwell. Nobody. "Excuse me?" Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper, which was far more terrifying than her shouts. "What did you just say to me?" "I said I saved his shirt, ma'am." Marcus kept his voice steady. The wine was heading for Mr. Sterling's chest. "I prevented the stain." "You prevented—" Victoria laughed incredulously. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, ma'am, I do." "Then you know that I can end you. Not just this job, not just this career. I can make sure you never work in this city again. I can make sure you never work anywhere again." Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. And something in him shifted. He thought about Lily, about the $47 in his account, about the school payment due in 3 days. He should apologize. He should grovel. He should do whatever it took to keep this job. But then he thought about the busboy, about the look of terror in that kid's eyes, about all the people Victoria had crushed beneath her designer heels. And Marcus realized he was tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching people like Victoria Blackwell destroy whoever they wanted because no one had the courage to stop them. "You're the customer who knocked her wine glass, blamed the busboy, and is now threatening me for doing my job." Marcus's voice was calm, clear, and carried to every nearby table. "I understand you're embarrassed, but intimidation won't change what everyone here just witnessed." For one beautiful moment, Victoria Blackwell was speechless. Alexander Sterling's eyebrows shot up. A corner of his mouth twitched. Then Victoria exploded. "Fire him! Arthur! Arthur, get over here right now!" Arthur materialized instantly, practically sprinting across the floor. His face was the color of old cheese. "Miss Blackwell, I am so sorry. I want this man removed, now. And I want him blacklisted from every establishment in Manhattan. I want his name on every do-not-hire list in the service industry." Of course. Marcus, come with me, now." Arthur grabbed Marcus's arm. Marcus shook him off. "I can walk myself out." He looked at Alexander Sterling one last time. The tech billionaire wasn't looking at Victoria. He was watching Marcus with an expression that was difficult to read. Not pity, something else. Recognition. Like one man seeing another man's ghost. Marcus turned and walked toward the kitchen. His back was straight. His pace was measured. He would not run. He would not show fear. As the double doors swung shut behind him, he heard Victoria's voice rising again, heard Arthur's desperate apologies, heard the murmur of gossip spreading through the room. He was fired. Again. For doing the right thing. Again. Some people never learn. The rain started as Marcus pushed through the service exit into the alley. Cold drops splattered against his face, mixing with something else. Sweat, maybe. or tears. He hadn't cried in years, but tonight his body seemed to have its own ideas. He leaned against the brick wall and pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from Lily's after-school program. A text from her teacher. Lily said she's hungry, didn't finish her lunch. Is everything okay at home? Marcus closed his eyes. $47. 3 days until the school payment. And now, no job. He thought about calling his sister in Jersey. Thought about swallowing his pride and asking for help. But Janelle had 3 kids of her own and a husband who'd just been laid off. She couldn't carry him. Nobody could carry him. That was quite a performance. Marcus's head snapped up. He hadn't heard anyone approach. Alexander Sterling stood at the service entrance, framed by the warm light spilling from inside. He wasn't wearing his jacket. Rain spotted his expensive white shirt, the same shirt Marcus had saved from the wine. Mr. Sterling. Marcus straightened, wiping his face quickly. If you're here for an apology, I'm not. Alexander stepped into the alley, letting the door swing shut behind him. He didn't seem to care about the rain ruining his clothes. You don't look like a waiter. Excuse me? Your reflexes back there, the way you moved, the way you calculated the trajectory of the wine and intercepted it. Alexander's eyes were sharp, analytical. And the way you spoke to Victoria, that wasn't panic or anger. That was controlled, precise. You chose every word. Marcus said nothing. I did a background check on you while Arthur was having his breakdown. Cold dread pooled in Marcus's stomach. That was fast. I own a tech company. Fast is what we do. Alexander pulled out his phone, showing Marcus the screen. Marcus Johnson, MBA from Columbia, forensic accounting specialist. Top of your class. 5 years at Miller & Ross before you were terminated for, he read from the screen, breach of confidentiality. You can stop there. Breach of confidentiality. Alexander lowered the phone. That's a nice way of saying you reported your boss for fraud, and they crucified you for it. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's one way to put it. The Morrison case. 18 billion hidden offshore. You found it. You reported it. And somehow you ended up blacklisted while the partner responsible is still playing golf at the country club. Life isn't fair, Mr. Sterling. I'm sure you've heard that before. I have. Alexander stepped closer. But here's what interests me. 3 years later, after everything they did to you, after they took your career, your reputation, probably your marriage, my wife left on her own. You still stood up. In a room full of powerful people who could destroy what little you have left, you told the truth. About a wine glass. Alexander's voice dropped. You're either the most principled man I've ever met, or you have a death wish. Maybe both. Alexander smiled slightly. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less exhausted. I need someone like you. You need a waiter? I need a forensic accountant. I need someone who looks at numbers and sees the truth beneath them. I need someone who isn't afraid of Victoria Blackwell. Marcus laughed. It was bitter. Why would the great Alexander Sterling need protection from his own fiancée? The word hit the air like a stone. Alexander's smile faded. You know about the engagement. Everyone knows. The merger of the century. Sterling Industries and Blackwell Industries. 2 empires becoming one. Marcus studied Alexander's face. But you don't look like a man who's excited about his wedding. I look like a man who's trapped. The confession hung between them. Victoria isn't just my fiancée, Alexander continued quietly. Her family supplies the steel for my wind turbines. Our companies have been intertwined for years. The merger was supposed to be a formality, But lately, I've been seeing things, discrepancies, numbers that don't add up. Marcus felt something stir, the old instincts, the pattern recognition that had made him one of the best in his field. What kind of discrepancies? The steel shipments. They're lighter than they should be. Not by much, a few percent here and there. But I've been in this business long enough to know what that means. They're substituting materials, Marcus said slowly. Charging you for premium grade and delivering something cheaper. That's what I suspect, but I can't prove it without alerting Victoria. And if she knows I'm looking, she'll cover her tracks. Or accelerate her plans. Alexander ran a hand through his rain-soaked hair. The merger papers are supposed to be signed on our wedding day. If I sign them and Blackwell Industries' assets are hollow, you lose everything. Thousands of people lose their jobs. My company collapses. And somewhere down the line, a wind turbine built with substandard steel fails in a storm. Maintenance workers die. Alexander's voice hardened. I won't let that happen. Marcus looked at the man. Really looked at him. Alexander Sterling wasn't the arrogant billionaire the tabloids painted. He was a man backed into a corner, fighting for something bigger than himself. Marcus knew that feeling. Why me? Marcus asked. You could hire any forensic accountant in the country. Because any forensic accountant I hire could be bought by Victoria's family. They have eyes everywhere. They have people everywhere. Alexander held out a sleek black business card. But you, Marcus Johnson, already proved you can't be bought. You sacrificed everything to tell the truth about the Morrison fraud. You lost your career, your reputation, your financial security. And tonight, with $47 in your bank account, yes, I checked, you still stood up to the most dangerous woman in New York. Marcus stared at the card. I need eyes I can trust, Alexander said. Eyes that aren't on Victoria's payroll. Eyes that will see what everyone else is too scared to look for. And if Victoria finds out what I'm doing? Then we both go down. But at least we go down fighting. Marcus thought about Lily. About her school, about the $47. He thought about the busboy with terror in his eyes, about all the people Victoria had destroyed because no one was brave enough to stop her. He thought about the man he used to be, before the world beat him down. The man who believed in justice. The man who thought the truth mattered. How much? $15,000 a month, plus a signing bonus that should cover your daughter's school payments for the year. Marcus's breath caught. Official title, personal assistant. Actual job, investigate every financial record connected to the Blackwell supply chain. Find the fraud. Bring me proof. And when we find it? Then I burn her empire to the ground. Alexander's eyes were cold now, determined. And you helped me light the match. Marcus reached out and took the card. The rain kept falling, washing the grime off the alley pavement. But it couldn't wash away what had just happened. A deal had been struck. A war had begun. And neither man knew yet just how much blood would be spilled before it was over. Marcus didn't go home right away. He walked for an hour through the wet streets, the business card burning in his pocket like a live coal. $15,000 a month. More than he'd made at Miller and Ross. More than enough to rebuild his life. But it wasn't the money that made him say yes. It was the look in Alexander Sterling's eyes. The desperation hidden beneath the billionaire's polished exterior. It was the memory of Victoria Blackwell's cruelty. The casual way she destroyed people. The absolute certainty that she would never face consequences. And beneath all of that, buried so deep Marcus had almost forgotten it existed, was the fire. The same fire that had ruined his life 3 years ago. The fire that wouldn't let him walk away from injustice, no matter the cost. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily's after-school program. Lily is drawing pictures while she waits. She drew one of you in a superhero cape. She says you're going to save the day. Marcus stopped walking. He stood there on the corner of 54th and Lexington, rain streaming down his face, staring at his phone. Save the day. His 8-year-old daughter still believed in him, still thought he was a hero. He had spent 3 years proving her wrong. 3 years of defeat and failure and just barely surviving. Maybe it was time to prove her right. He typed back, "Tell her daddy's coming home soon. And save that picture for me." Then he turned toward the subway, toward the apartment where his daughter was waiting, toward whatever came next. The card was still in his pocket. The match was in his hand. All he had to do was strike it. Marcus was at Sterling Tower by 7:30 the next morning. He had told Lily he got a new job, a better job, one that would let him buy her those new sneakers she wanted. She had hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. "I knew it, Daddy," she whispered into his chest. "I knew something good was coming." He didn't tell her the rest. Didn't tell her that something good might also be something dangerous. The lobby of Sterling Tower was all glass and steel and intimidation. Men in suits walked with purpose. Women in heels clicked across marble floors. Everyone looked like they belonged. Marcus did not look like he belonged. He was wearing his only decent suit, a navy blue number he had saved from his old life. It was slightly too tight now. He had lost weight in the past 3 years, the wrong kind of weight. The kind that comes from skipping meals, so your daughter can eat. "Can I help you?" The receptionist looked at him the way people always looked at him now. Suspicious. Dismissive. "Marcus Johnson, I'm here to see Mr. Sterling." She typed something into her computer. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, yes, Mr. Johnson. You're expected on the executive floor. Elevator bank C, penthouse level." The elevator ride took 47 seconds. Marcus counted. It was a habit from his accounting days. Counting things, measuring things, finding patterns in numbers that other people missed. The doors opened onto a world Marcus had almost forgotten existed. Thick carpet, original artwork, the smell of fresh coffee and expensive leather. And standing in the middle of it all, like a spider in the center of her web, was Victoria Blackwell. She was wearing white today. It made her look almost angelic, which Marcus found darkly amusing. "Well, well," Victoria's voice dripped with mock sweetness. "The cockroach returns." Marcus kept his face neutral. "Good morning, Miss Blackwell." "It's not a good morning for you, I'm afraid." She walked toward him slowly, her heels silent on the thick carpet. "I made some calls last night. Did you know that Arthur, your former manager, has a gambling problem? It only took a small suggestion to make him very talkative." She stopped inches from Marcus's face. "I know you were fired from Miller and Ross." "I know why. You're a troublemaker, Marcus Johnson. A whistleblower." She spat the word like it was poison. "Do you know what happens to whistleblowers in my world? They get destroyed. They get erased." Victoria smiled. "So why are you here? Did Alexander take pity on you? Does he think having a charity case as an assistant makes him look progressive? You'd have to ask him." "Oh, I will." She leaned closer. "But let me make something very clear. You are here because Alexander finds you amusing, a toy, a distraction. But toys break, Marcus. And when you break, I will be the one sweeping up the pieces." "Victoria!" Alexander's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stood in the doorway of his office, his expression unreadable. "Leave my assistant alone." I was just welcoming him to the family, darling. Victoria's voice transformed instantly, becoming warm and playful. She walked to Alexander and kissed his cheek. I have meetings downtown. Try not to work too hard. She paused at the elevator, looking back at Marcus one last time. Remember what I said. Toys break. Then she was gone. Alexander waited until the elevator doors closed before he spoke. She threatened you? She threatened to erase me. That's her way of saying hello. Alexander gestured toward his office. Come, we have work to do. The inner office was larger than Marcus's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Central Park that probably cost more than most people's mortgages. But Marcus wasn't interested in the view. He was interested in the tablet Alexander pulled from a locked drawer. This contains the raw data from our last 18 months of operations, Alexander said, sliding the device across the desk. Supply chain records, shipping manifests, payment histories, everything connected to Blackwell Industries. Marcus picked up the tablet. It felt heavy with potential. The board sees sanitized reports, Alexander continued. Numbers that have been cleaned up, made presentable. But the raw data tells a different story. At least, I think it does. What story? I don't know yet. That's why I need you. Alexander sat down behind his desk. You have 2 weeks before the quarterly review. After that, Victoria will expect to see you at board meetings, social events. You'll be visible, vulnerable. 2 weeks to find evidence of fraud. 2 weeks to find something, anything, a thread I can pull. Marcus turned on the tablet. Rows of numbers filled the screen. To most people, they would look like gibberish. To Marcus, they looked like a language he hadn't spoken in 3 years. I'll need access to the original shipping documents, Marcus said. Weight reports from the Port Authority. Customs declarations. Done. I'll have everything sent to your workstation. And I'll need to move around the building freely. Talk to people. The fraud, if there is fraud, it won't just be in the numbers. It'll be in the gaps. The things people aren't saying. Alexander nodded slowly. I'll tell the staff you're conducting an internal efficiency review. That should give you cover. One more thing. Marcus looked up from the tablet. I need to know something. The engagement to Victoria, was it real? Did you love her? The question hung in the air. For a long moment, Alexander didn't answer. I thought I did, he finally said. 3 years ago when we met, she was different. Charming, supportive. She made me feel like I wasn't alone in building this empire. He paused. Then things changed. Slowly at first. A cruel comment here, a threat there. By the time I saw what she really was, our companies were too intertwined. Breaking the engagement would mean breaking Sterling Industries. So you became her prisoner. A golden cage is still a cage. Alexander's voice was bitter. Every day, I wake up knowing that the woman sleeping next to me would destroy everything I've built if it suited her purposes. Every night, I wonder if tomorrow is the day she decides I'm no longer useful. Marcus understood that feeling. The constant fear, the paranoia, the sense of being trapped by forces beyond your control. I'll find your evidence, Marcus said, but I need you to understand something. If I do this, if I help you bring down Victoria Blackwell, there's no going back, for either of us. I know. She won't just come for our careers. She'll come for everything. Our families, our futures, our lives. I know. Alexander met his eyes. That's why I chose you, Marcus. Because you've already lost everything once. You know what it costs to do the right thing. And you did it anyway. Marcus thought about Lily, about the picture she drew of him in a superhero cape. Yeah, he said quietly. I did it anyway. The first week was a blur of numbers and coffee and pretending to be someone he wasn't. Marcus set up his workstation in a small office near the server room. It was cramped and windowless, but it had one advantage. It was far from Victoria's frequent visits to the executive floor. He dove into the data with the intensity of a man possessed. Shipping manifests, weight reports, customs declarations, bank transfers. He built spreadsheets. He created databases. He traced the path of every steel shipment from Blackwell Mills to Sterling facilities. And slowly, patterns began to emerge. "You're here late." Marcus looked up from his screen. A woman stood in his doorway, late 40s, tired eyes, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried a stack of folders. "I could say the same about you." "I'm Margaret, accounting department." She nodded toward his screen. "You're the efficiency consultant, right? The one Mr. Sterling brought in?" "That's what they call me." Margaret glanced down the hallway, then stepped inside and closed the door. "I've been with this company for 15 years, she said quietly. "I've seen consultants come and go. They usually spend their time in meetings, writing reports no one reads. They don't hole up in the basement running numbers until midnight." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Maybe I'm more thorough than most." "Or maybe you're looking for something specific." Margaret set her folders on his desk. "These are the original shipping logs from the Blackwell contracts, the physical copies. They were supposed to be destroyed last year, but I kept them." "Why?" "Because numbers don't lie, Mr. Johnson, and these numbers have been lying to me for 2 years." She met his eyes. "The digital records show grade A steel coming in from Blackwell Mills, but the weight reports from the trucking company don't match. They're light, consistently light." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "You noticed this 2 years ago?" "I tried to report it. I went to my supervisor." Margaret's voice hardened. 2 weeks later, my daughter's scholarship was revoked. No explanation. Then my husband's security clearance at his government job was flagged for review. Random coincidences, they said. "Victoria, I never had proof, but I knew." Margaret turned toward the door. "I have a pension to protect, Mr. Johnson, a family to support. I can't afford to be a hero. But maybe you can." She left without another word. Marcus sat alone in his small office, staring at the folders she had left behind. 2 years. Victoria had been defrauding Sterling Industries for 2 years, and everyone who noticed had been silenced. Everyone except him. He opened the first folder and began to read. Marcus called Lily every night at 8 o'clock. It was their routine, their anchor. No matter how late he worked, no matter how deep he was in the numbers, he stopped at 8.
"Daddy, guess what?
"What, baby?"
I got an A on my spelling test. Mrs. Patterson said I'm the best speller in the whole class."
Marcus smiled, leaning back in his chair. The glow of his computer screen was the only light in his office. "That's my girl. I knew you could do it."
"Are you coming home soon? I made you a picture. It's you fighting a dragon."
"A dragon, huh?"
"Yeah, it's a mean dragon that's been hurting people. But you're beating it up because you're brave."
Marcus closed his eyes. She didn't know how close to the truth she was. "I'll be home soon, baby. Save that picture for me."
"I will. Daddy,
"Yeah?"
are you okay? You sound tired."
"I'm fine, sweetheart. Just working hard to make things better for us."
"I know you are."
Her voice was so certain, so full of faith.
"That's what heroes do."
After she hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness for a long time. Heroes. She still believed he was a hero. He thought about what he was doing, the risk he was taking. If Victoria found out, she wouldn't just destroy him. She would destroy everything he loved. But if he didn't stop her, people would die. Maintenance workers on offshore platforms killed by failing turbines built with substandard steel. Fathers who would never come home to their daughters. He couldn't let that happen. Marcus turned back to his computer and kept working. By the end of the second week, Marcus had found it. The discrepancy was buried deep in the supply chain logs, hidden among thousands of transactions. But once he saw the pattern, it was unmistakable. The steel shipments from Blackwell Mills were logged at specific weights when they left the factory. But when they arrived at Sterling facilities, the weights were slightly different, consistently lower, by exactly 15%. Someone was swapping grade A steel for cheaper alloy somewhere between the factory and delivery. And based on the financial records, that someone was pocketing the difference. $47 million over 2 years. Marcus stared at the spreadsheet, his mind racing. He needed to confirm his findings. He needed physical evidence. "Mr. Johnson," he minimized his screen quickly. A man stood in his doorway, tall, muscular, with the flat eyes of someone who had seen violence and didn't flinch from it. "Can I help you?" "I'm Cross, head of security for the Blackwell family." The man's voice was pleasant, but there was something underneath it. Something dangerous. "Miss Blackwell asked me to check on her fiancé's new consultant. Make sure you have everything you need." "I'm fine, thank you." "Working late again, I see." Cross glanced at Marcus's computer screen. "Must be an important project." "Just efficiency reviews. Boring stuff." "Boring," Cross smiled, but his eyes didn't change. "That's funny, because Miss Blackwell finds you very interesting, Mr. Johnson. She's been asking about your background, your history, your family." Marcus's blood went cold. "My family? You have a daughter, don't you?" "Lily, 8 years old, attends Jefferson Elementary." Cross paused, letting the words sink in. "Beautiful school, very safe neighborhood. Miss Blackwell was thinking of making a donation." The threat was clear. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "That's very generous of her." "Miss Blackwell is a very generous woman. To her friends." Cross straightened his tie. "I hope you'll remember that, Mr. Johnson. It would be unfortunate if anything happened to disrupt Mr. Sterling's engagement. Very unfortunate." He turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the carpet. Marcus sat frozen in his chair. His hands were shaking. They knew. Maybe not everything, but they knew enough. Victoria had sent her attack dog to sniff around, to deliver a warning. His daughter. They had mentioned his daughter. Marcus grabbed his phone and dialed Alexander's private line. "We need to talk. Now." Alexander's apartment took up the entire top floor of a building overlooking the Hudson River. It was the kind of place Marcus had only seen in magazines. Vast, open spaces, modern art, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. But tonight, it felt like a war room. "They threatened Lily?" Alexander's face was pale. "Directly?" Cross mentioned her school, her age. He said Victoria was thinking of making a donation. Marcus paced the length of the living room. It wasn't subtle. Victoria doesn't do subtle when she's scared. Scared? She's not scared. She's warning me off. No, Alexander shook his head. If she wasn't scared, she would have just fired you, or had you arrested on some trumped-up charge. The fact that she sent Cross to threaten your family means she knows something is wrong. She's trying to control the situation. Well, she's doing a damn good job of controlling me right now. Marcus stopped pacing. I have a daughter, Alexander, an 8-year-old girl who thinks her father is a hero. I can't put her in danger. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't protect her. No, but I can. Alexander stood up. I have a property upstate, a farmhouse, completely off the grid, registered under a shell company Victoria doesn't know about. Your sister lives in Jersey, right? We can move Lily there. Tell her it's a vacation." Marcus stared at him. "You'd do that? I told you I need eyes I can trust. That means I protect those eyes." Alexander's voice was firm. "We can have Lily relocated by tomorrow afternoon. She'll be safe while we finish this." Marcus thought about his daughter, about the fear he felt when Cross mentioned her name. He thought about the $47 million Victoria had stolen, about the substandard steel that could kill workers,
About all the people who had been silenced because they tried to do the right thing.
"Okay," Marcus said quietly. "We move Lily, and then we finish this." "Are you sure? Once we go down this path?" "I'm sure." Marcus met Alexander's eyes. "Victoria Blackwell thinks she can threaten my family and I'll run away. She thinks I'm just another person she can erase. But she made a mistake." "What mistake?" "She reminded me who I am." Marcus's voice hardened. "I'm not a waiter. I'm not a victim. I'm the man who brought down Morris and Partners. I'm the man who sacrificed everything for the truth. And I'm about to do it again." The drive to Jersey took 2 hours. Marcus spent most of it rehearsing what he would say to Lily, how he would explain that she needed to stay with Aunt Janelle for a while. But when he arrived at his sister's house, when he saw Lily's face light up at the sight of him, all his rehearsed words disappeared.
"Daddy!"
She ran into his arms, and he held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. "Hey, baby."
"What are you doing here? It's not the weekend."
"I know. I wanted to surprise you." He set her down, kneeling to look her in the eyes. "How would you like to stay with Aunt Janelle for a little while? Like a vacation?" Lily's face fell slightly.
"But I just started getting good grades. I don't want to miss school."
"It's just for a few weeks. Aunt Janelle will help you with homework, and I'll call you every single night. I promise."
"But why, Daddy? Why can't I stay home with you?"
Marcus looked at his daughter. Her hazel eyes, his eyes, were searching his face for answers he couldn't give her. "Daddy has to take care of something important. Something that's going to help a lot of people. But I need to know you're safe while I do it."
"Are you in trouble?"
"No, baby. I'm just being careful." Lily was quiet for a moment.
Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made this for you, remember? The picture of you fighting the dragon."
Marcus unfolded it. Crayon lines showed a tall figure in a cape, standing over a fallen monster. The figure had brown skin and a big smile.
"You're going to beat the dragon, right, Daddy?"
Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. He pulled her into another hug. "Yeah, baby. I'm going to beat the dragon." He left an hour later, after promising to call every night, after hugging his sister and thanking her for taking Lily in, after watching from the car as his daughter waved from the window. The drive back to Manhattan felt longer, emptier. But Marcus wasn't scared anymore. Victoria Blackwell had made her move. She had threatened the one thing he loved most in the world. Now it was his turn. He pulled out his phone and called Alexander. "It's done. Lily's safe." "Good. What now?" "Now we go on offense." Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I found the discrepancy in the steel shipments. Victoria's been swapping materials for at least 2 years. But I need physical proof, something that can't be dismissed as a computer glitch or a data entry error." "What do you have in mind?" "The shadow ledger. Old-school criminals don't trust the cloud. They keep physical records. If Victoria's father is running this operation, he'll have a book somewhere. Names, dates, payments. Richard Kensington keeps a briefcase with him at all times. I've always assumed it held merger documents. I need to see what's inside that briefcase." "That won't be easy. Richard is paranoid. He doesn't let anyone near his personal effects." then we need to create an opportunity. Marcus's mind was already working, calculating possibilities. When's the next event where both Richard and Victoria will be present? The Sterling Charity Gala, Saturday night, Metropolitan Museum of Art. 4 days.
Marcus nodded to himself. I can work with that.
What are you planning? I'm planning to give Victoria Blackwell exactly what she expects. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. A beaten, broken man who knows his place. Someone who's given up. Someone she'll underestimate. And then? And then I'm going to take everything from her. Marcus hung up and drove into the Manhattan night. The city lights reflected off his windshield like 1,000 watching eyes. Somewhere in this city, Victoria Blackwell was celebrating. She thought she had won. She thought her threat had worked. She had no idea what was coming. The 4 days before the gala were the longest of Marcus's life. He played his role perfectly. At Sterling Tower, he kept his head down. He avoided eye contact with Victoria when she swept through the offices. He spoke in monosyllables. He hunched his shoulders like a man who had been broken. And every night, alone in his basement office, he built his case.
The steel discrepancies were just the beginning. Once Marcus knew what to look for, he found threads everywhere. Payments to shell companies, inflated invoices, signatures that didn't match. Victoria's empire was built on fraud, and the foundation was starting to crack. But he still needed the ledger, the physical proof that would make everything else undeniable. On Wednesday afternoon, 2 days before the gala, Victoria summoned him. "Mr. Johnson." Her voice echoed through the executive floor. "My office, now." Marcus walked slowly, keeping his eyes down. Several employees watched him pass, their faces a mixture of pity and relief that they weren't the ones being called. Victoria's office was all white marble and sharp edges. She sat behind a glass desk, watching him like a cat watches a mouse it's already caught. "Close the door." Marcus obeyed. "Sit." He sat. Victoria studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. "You look tired, Mr. Johnson." The bags under your eyes are quite prominent. Having trouble sleeping?
"Just working hard, Miss Blackwell."
Are you? She leaned forward. Because I've been watching you. You've been very quiet lately, very obedient. No more clever remarks, no more defiant stares. It's almost like you finally learned your place.
Marcus said nothing.
"I hear your daughter is staying with relatives in Jersey. A sudden vacation right in the middle of the school year. How unusual."
His heart clenched, but he kept his face blank. She needed some time with family.
Of course she did.
Victoria stood and walked around her desk, stopping inches from his chair.
"You know, Marcus, I almost feel sorry for you. You came into this building thinking you could, what, impress Alexander? Prove something? But you're learning what everyone eventually learns. There are wolves and there are sheep. And you, Marcus Johnson, are definitely a sheep."
"Yes, ma'am."
"Good. I'm glad we understand each other."
She perched on the edge of her desk, crossing her legs.
"I have a task for you. My father needs some documents retrieved from the sub-basement archives. Old contracts from the 1998 steel negotiations. They're in a storage crate marked K98. Bring them to the penthouse conference room by 4 o'clock.
Marcus looked up. "The sub-basement?"
Is there a problem?"
"No, ma'am. I've never been down there."
"It's not complicated. Take the freight elevator, find the crate, bring the documents."
Victoria's smile widened slightly.
"Even a sheep can manage that." Something felt wrong. Marcus could sense it in the way she was watching him, in the barely concealed anticipation in her eyes. But he had no choice.
I'll have them by 4.
See that you do.
The freight elevator descended into darkness. Marcus watched the numbers drop. B1, B2, B3, and felt the temperature falling with each floor. When the doors opened, he stepped into a concrete cavern that smelled of dust and decay. The lighting was sparse, just a few fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead. Rows of storage shelves stretched into the shadows. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal. The sub-basement was a dead zone. Of course it was. He moved through the aisles, checking labels on crates. K92, K94, K96. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Then he heard it. A heavy metallic clank from behind him. The elevator doors. Marcus spun around. Through the gaps in the shelving, he could see the elevator. The doors were sliding shut. And standing inside, his finger on the button, was Cross. The security chief's eyes met Marcus's through the shadows. He wasn't smiling. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, breaking into a run. "Hold the elevator!" Cross didn't move. The doors closed with a sound like a coffin lid. Marcus slammed his palm against the call button. Nothing. The panel was dark. He tried again. Still nothing. Then the overhead lights flickered and died. Total darkness. Marcus stood frozen, his breath loud in his ears. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a malfunction. This was the trap. He fumbled for his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the blackness, illuminating dust motes floating in the stale air. Think, don't panic. Panic gets you killed. He swept the light across the basement, looking for options. Emergency stairs. There had to be emergency stairs. Fire code required them. He found the door at the far end of the room. A heavy steel door with a crash bar. Marcus pushed. Locked. From the outside. You've got to be kidding me. He was trapped. No phone signal. No way out. And somewhere above him, Victoria was probably watching the whole thing on security cameras. She wanted him to break. To scream. To pound on the doors until his hands bled. She wanted to prove that he was just another victim. Just another person she could crush. Marcus sat down on the storage crate. He turned off his flashlight to conserve battery, and in the darkness, he did the last thing Victoria would expect. He started working. The tablet Alexander had given him had offline capability. Marcus pulled it from his bag and powered it on. The screen cast a pale glow across his face. If Victoria wanted to trap him in the dark, fine. He would use the time. He opened the supply chain files and dove back into the numbers. Hours passed. The cold seeped into his bones. His fingers grew stiff. But Marcus kept working, kept searching, kept pulling at threads. And then he found it. A secondary ledger. Hidden in the metadata of a shipping document, encrypted, but not well enough. Marcus cracked the password, Victoria's birthday, which he had learned from company records, and the file opened. His breath caught. It was all there. Every fraudulent transaction, every bribe, every substituted shipment. Dates, amounts, names. The shadow accounting of a criminal enterprise. But that wasn't what made Marcus's hands shake. It was the technical specifications. The steel being shipped to Alexander's offshore wind farm wasn't just cheaper. It was dangerously substandard. Calculations showed that in anything above a Category 2 storm, the turbine supports would fail. They would collapse. They would kill everyone on the maintenance platforms. Victoria wasn't just committing fraud. She was building death traps. Marcus stared at the screen, the horror of it sinking in. Those maintenance workers had families. Children who waited for them to come home. Fathers and mothers who kissed them goodbye every morning, not knowing if today was the day a turbine would fall. Just like Lily waited for him. A sound echoed from somewhere in the darkness. Marcus froze. He turned off the tablet, plunging himself back into blackness. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Someone was in the basement with him.
"You're a persistent one, I'll give you that." Cross's voice floated through the dark.
Marcus couldn't tell where it was coming from. The concrete walls bounced sound in strange ways. "Victoria wanted me to leave you down here all night. Let you get cold and scared. Let you quit in the morning." Cross's footsteps grew closer. "But I told her, why wait? Why give a rat time to think?" Marcus moved silently, keeping his breathing shallow. He slipped between two tall shelving units, pressing himself into the shadows. "I know you're not just an efficiency consultant," Cross continued. "I know you've been poking around in files you shouldn't touch, talking to people you shouldn't talk to." A flashlight beam swept across the far wall. Cross was hunting. "Victoria thinks you're just a nuisance, something to be swatted. But I see something different. I see a man who doesn't know when to quit. A man who thinks he's righteous." The footsteps stopped. "I've killed righteous men before."
They always look surprised at the end. Marcus's hand closed around a heavy metal bracket on the shelf next to him. It wasn't much, but it was something. He thought about Lily, about the promise he made to beat the dragon. He wasn't going to die in this basement. Marcus grabbed a paint can from the shelf and hurled it toward the opposite side of the room. It crashed against the concrete with a deafening clatter. "There you are!" Cross's flashlight swung toward the noise. His footsteps moved away. Marcus ran. He sprinted through the darkness, using his memory of the layout to navigate. Left past the crates, right at the support pillar, straight toward the maintenance ladder he had spotted earlier. The ladder led up to an access hatch. It was his only chance. Behind him, Cross realized the deception. Clever, but not clever enough. Marcus reached the ladder and climbed. 3 rungs. 5. 7. A hand grabbed his ankle. Cross had moved faster than any man that size should be able to move. He yanked hard, trying to pull Marcus down. Marcus kicked. His heel connected with something soft. Cross's face, maybe. The grip loosened. He climbed faster, his arms burning with effort. The access hatch was above him. He pushed. It didn't move. No, no, no! Cross was climbing after him now, his breathing heavy with rage. Marcus pushed again, throwing his shoulder against the hatch. Metal groaned. Rust flaked off. The hatch burst open. Light flooded down. Marcus hauled himself through the opening, rolling under what felt like a maintenance corridor. He scrambled to his feet and kicked the hatch closed, just as Cross's fingers appeared at the edge. A scream of frustration echoed from below. Marcus didn't wait. He ran down the corridor, following the emergency exit signs, until he burst through a door into the main lobby of Sterling Tower. People stared. Security guards moved toward him. "I'm fine," Marcus gasped, holding up his hands. "I'm fine. Just got lost in the basement. Elevator malfunctioned." The guards exchanged glances. One of them reached for his radio. "Don't!" Alexander's voice cut through the lobby. He strode toward Marcus, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Mr. Johnson is with me. There's been a facilities issue. I'll handle it personally." Alexander grabbed Marcus's arm and steered him toward the executive elevator. "You're bleeding," Alexander said quietly. Marcus looked down. His hands were scraped raw from climbing. Blood dripped onto the marble floor. "I found something," Marcus said. "In the basement, before Cross came." "Cross was there?" "He tried to kill me, or at least hurt me badly enough to send a message." The elevator doors closed. Alexander's jaw tightened. What did you find?
Everything. The secondary ledger, the substituted steel specifications.
Victoria isn't just stealing money. She's building turbines that will collapse in a storm. People will die, Alexander. Maintenance crews, workers with families. Alexander closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked like a man who had just watched his worst fears confirmed. We need to move faster, he said. The gala is in 2 days. We can't wait. Agreed. But I need physical evidence. The digital files can be dismissed. I need Richard's ledger, the original shadow book. The briefcase. Yes, at the gala. I need to get inside that briefcase. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. Victoria will be watching you like a hawk after today. She knows you escaped. She knows you found something. She'll be planning her next move. Let her plan. Marcus met Alexander's eyes. She thinks I'm a sheep. She thinks I'm beaten. Let her keep thinking that until it's too late. And if she moves against you first? Against Lily? Lily is safe. My sister moved her to a friend's cabin upstate. No connection to any of us. No paper trail. You hope. I know. Marcus's voice hardened. Victoria Blackwell has taken everything from people like me for years. She's threatened my daughter. She's tried to bury me in a basement. She's built machines that will kill innocent workers just to line her pockets. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm going to that gala. I'm going to open that briefcase, and I'm going to end her. Alexander studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Then we'd better get you cleaned up. You have a suit fitting in an hour. Marcus looked down at his torn clothes, his bleeding hands, his dust-covered shoes. A suit fitting? You're attending the Sterling Charity Gala as my head of internal audit. You need to look the part. Alexander allowed himself a small smile. We're going to war, Marcus. Might as well dress for it. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Alexander's people provided Marcus with a tailored suit, charcoal gray, perfect fit, worth more than his car. They briefed him on the gala layout, the guest list, the security protocols, and they confirmed the FBI's involvement. We've been building a case against Richard Kensington for months, Agent Torres said. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, all business and no nonsense. But we never had enough to move. Your evidence changes that. You need the physical ledger, Marcus said. We need the physical ledger in a context that will hold up in court. If we raid Richard's home, his lawyers will claim we planted it. We need to catch him with the book in a public setting, with witnesses. The gala. The gala. Torres leaned forward. Here's the plan. You attend as Alexander's guest. You approach Richard. You create a situation where he opens the briefcase. Our agents, positioned as waiters and guests, document everything. Once we have visual confirmation of the ledger, we move in. What about Victoria? She's part of the arrest warrant. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Racketeering. We've been waiting years for this. Marcus thought about the woman who had threatened his daughter, who had sent Cross to hunt him in the darkness, who had built her empire on the bones of everyone she destroyed. Make sure she doesn't slip away. She won't. Torres's voice was cold. I promise you that. The night before the gala, Marcus called Lily. Daddy! Her voice washed over him like warm water. He closed his eyes, letting it fill the cold places in his chest. Hey, baby. How's the cabin? It's so cool. There's a lake and deer, and Aunt Janelle let me stay up late to watch the stars. That sounds amazing. When are you coming to visit? I miss you. Marcus's throat tightened. Soon, baby. Real soon. I just have one more thing to take care of. The dragon? He smiled despite everything. Yeah, the dragon. Are you going to beat it?
I'm going to try.
You will. Her voice was so certain, so full of faith.
You're the bravest person I know, Daddy.
I don't know about that, baby.
I do. Mrs. Patterson says brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing, even when you're scared. And you always do the right thing.
Marcus couldn't speak. His daughter, 8 years old, had just cut through all his fear and doubt with the simple clarity of a child. I love you, Lily.
I love you too, Daddy. Beat the dragon. Then come get me, okay?
Okay, I promise. He hung up and sat in the darkness of his apartment for a long time. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, he would walk into a room full of the most powerful people in New York and try to bring down an empire. He might succeed. He might fail. He might end up in prison, or dead, or destroyed all over again. But his daughter believed in him. That was enough. The Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed. The Great Hall blazed with light. The city's elite circulated like exotic fish in an expensive aquarium. Marcus stood at the entrance, adjusting his tie. The suit fit perfectly. His shoes gleamed. He looked like he belonged. He didn't feel like he belonged. Ready? Alexander appeared beside him, resplendent in the custom tuxedo. No. Good. Neither am I. Alexander clapped him on the shoulder. Let's go change the world. They entered together. Heads turned. Whispers followed. Marcus spotted Victoria immediately. She was wearing gold tonight, a dress that looked like liquid metal poured over her body. She saw him, and her eyes widened slightly. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile.
Well, well,
Victoria glided toward them, champagne flute in hand.
the survivor returns. I heard you had quite an adventure in the basement, Mr. Johnson.
Elevator malfunction. These things happen.
Do they? She sipped her champagne.
You look different tonight, almost like a real person.
Amazing what a good suit can do.
Victoria's smile flickered. She wasn't used to being matched. Enjoy the party, Mr. Johnson. It may be your last. She turned to Alexander.
Darling, my father wants to discuss the merger timeline. He's by the bar.
In a moment. I need to speak with some board members first. Victoria's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. She swept away into the crowd, gold dress shimmering. She knows something's wrong, Alexander murmured. Let her wonder. Marcus scanned the room. Where's Richard? Northwest corner, near the Egyptian wing. He's got the briefcase. I see him. Richard Kensington was exactly what Marcus expected. A red-faced man in his 60s, with the entitled bearing of someone who had never heard the word no. The leather briefcase sat at his feet like an obedient dog. I need to get him to open it, Marcus said.
How?
I'm going to give him what he wants. A target for his anger. Alexander grabbed his arm.
Marcus.
Trust me. Marcus pulled free. When I give the signal, make sure Torres is ready. He walked toward Richard Kensington, his heart pounding, but his face calm. Richard noticed him approaching. His eyes narrowed. You're the assistant, the one Victoria told me about. Marcus Johnson, sir, head of internal audit. I know who you are. Richard's voice dripped with contempt. You're the troublemaker, the one who's been poking around in things that don't concern him. I'm just doing my job, sir. Your job, Richard laughed, a harsh sound. Your job is whatever we tell you it is. You think because Alexander gave you a fancy title you actually matter? You're nobody. You're nothing. Marcus felt the old anger rising. He let it show on his face. With respect, sir, I think you're wrong about that. Excuse me? I think I matter quite a bit, especially when it comes to certain discrepancies in the Blackwell supply chain. Richard's face went from red to purple. His hand tightened on his champagne glass. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. The steel shipments from Blackwell Mills are 15% lighter than documented. The grade specifications are falsified. And somewhere, someone is keeping very detailed records of exactly where the money is going. Richard's eyes flickered to the briefcase at his feet. Just for a second. But Marcus saw it. "You're insane," Richard sputtered. "You have no proof of anything." "Don't I?" Marcus stepped closer. "Here's what I think, Mr. Kensington. I think you've been running a fraud for years. I think you've been substituting cheap alloy for premium steel and pocketing the difference. And I think you're so arrogant that you keep records of everything in a little book somewhere, just in case you need leverage." Richard grabbed Marcus's arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a man his age. "Listen to me, you insignificant little cockroach. I don't know what you think you know, but I will destroy you. I will destroy your family. I will destroy everyone you've ever cared about." "Show me." "What?" "Show me I'm wrong." Marcus nodded toward the briefcase. "Open your bag. Show everyone there's nothing to hide." "Unless there is." Richard's face contorted with rage. For a moment, Marcus thought the older man might actually hit him. Instead, Richard grabbed the briefcase and slammed it onto a nearby table. "Fine. You want to see? You want to embarrass yourself in front of all these people?" He spun the combination lock. Click, click, click. The briefcase opened. And there, sitting on top of a stack of merger documents, was a red, leather-bound ledger. Marcus didn't touch it. He didn't have to. Around the room, at least a dozen guests and waiters turned toward the commotion. Agent Torres moved forward, badge already in hand. "Richard Kensington, FBI. Please step away from the table." Richard's face went white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. This is entrapment. This is illegal. You can't." "We can, and we are." Torres signaled her team. "You're under arrest for fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit bribery." Chaos erupted. Guests scattered. Security rushed toward the commotion. Somewhere in the crowd, Victoria's voice rose in a scream of pure rage. "No! What is happening? Father! Father!" Marcus watched as agents surrounded Richard Kensington, as they photographed the ledger, as they began reading him his rights. He felt a hand on his shoulder. "Alexander." "You did it." "Not yet." Marcus turned, scanning the room. "Where's Victoria?" But Victoria was already moving. She pushed through the crowd, heading for the exit, her gold dress flashing like a warning beacon. "She's running," Marcus said. "Let the FBI..." "No." Marcus pulled away from Alexander. "This one's mine," he ran after her. Victoria was fast. Even in heels, even in that ridiculous gold dress, she moved through the crowd like a shark through water. People parted for her automatically. Years of conditioning had taught New York's elite to get out of Victoria Blackwell's way. But Marcus was faster. He had spent 3 years walking everywhere because he couldn't afford the subway. His legs were strong. His lungs were stronger. And he had something Victoria didn't have. He had nothing left to lose. "Move!" Marcus shouldered past a waiter carrying champagne. Glasses crashed to the floor behind him. "FBI, coming through!" It wasn't technically true, but it worked. The crowd scattered. Victoria reached the back exit, a service door that led to the museum's loading area. She slammed through it without looking back. Marcus followed. The loading dock was cold and dark, a concrete cavern lit by flickering industrial lights. Trucks sat silent in their bays. The smell of garbage and exhaust hung in the air. Victoria stood at the far end, near a black SUV. Cross was there, holding the door open. "Miss Blackwell, we need to go. Now." "I know that." Victoria's voice cracked with panic. She was losing control, and she knew it. "Start the car!" "Victoria!" Marcus's voice echoed across the loading dock. Victoria froze. Slowly she turned. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stared at each other across 30 feet of concrete. The billionaire's daughter in her golden armor, and the single father in his borrowed suit. "You," Victoria breathed, her face twisted with hatred. "You did this. You destroyed everything." "No, you destroyed everything." Marcus walked toward her slowly. "I just showed people the truth." "The truth," Victoria laughed, a wild sound. "The truth is whatever I say it is. The truth is whatever I pay people to believe."
You think one little ledger is going to stop me? My lawyers will have my father out by morning. They'll discredit your evidence. They'll say you planted it.
"They can try."
They'll succeed. Victoria's confidence was returning. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin.
"You have no idea who you're dealing with, Marcus Johnson. The Kensington family has been running this city for 3 generations. We own judges. We own prosecutors. We own the media. Your little crusade means nothing."
Cross. Marcus turned to the security chief, who was still standing by the SUV. "Did you know about the steal?" Cross's face remained impassive. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The substituted materials. The substandard alloy going into Alexander's wind turbines. Did you know that when those turbines fail, people will die?" Something flickered in Cross's eyes, just for a second. "I follow orders." "Whose orders? Victoria's? Richard's?" Marcus took another step forward. "Those maintenance workers have families, Cross. Kids who are waiting for their dads to come home. When those turbines collapse in a storm, how many children are you going to orphan?" "Stop talking." Victoria's voice was sharp. "Cross, get in the car. We're leaving." But Cross didn't move. "He asked you a question," Cross said quietly. "About the steal." "I don't have to answer questions from the help." $47 million. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing the screen to Cross. "That's how much Victoria and her father have stolen. And this," he swiped to another document, "is the engineering analysis. The turbines will fail in anything above a Category 2 storm. Estimated casualties? Between 15 and 40 workers, depending on how many are on the platforms when it happens." Cross stared at the phone. His jaw tightened. "You told me it was just accounting fraud," Cross said to Victoria. "You told me no one would get hurt." "No one important will get hurt. They're just workers. They're replaceable." The silence that followed was deafening. Cross stepped away from the SUV. "What are you doing?" Victoria's voice rose. "Get back in position." "I've done a lot of things for your family, Miss Blackwell. A lot of things I'm not proud of." Cross's voice was flat, emotionless. "But I don't kill civilians. I don't orphan kids." "I'm ordering you. You're not ordering me to do anything." "Not anymore." Cross pulled out his phone. "I have recordings. Insurance in case things went bad. Every conversation we've had about the steal, about the substitutions, about paying off inspectors. It's all documented." Victoria's face went white. "You traitor. You worthless, backstabbing." "I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a child killer." Cross looked at Marcus. "I'll testify. Against her, against Richard, against anyone involved. In exchange for immunity." Marcus nodded slowly. "I think that can be arranged." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Victoria looked around wildly, searching for an escape that didn't exist. The loading dock had 2 exits, the one Marcus was blocking, and the one now filling with police lights. "This isn't over," Victoria hissed. "I have resources you can't imagine. I have people everywhere. I'll rebuild. I'll come back. And when I do, I will destroy you, Marcus Johnson. I will destroy your daughter. I will destroy everyone you've ever. Stop. The word cut through Victoria's tirade like a blade. Marcus walked toward her until they were face to face. Close enough to see the fear beneath her rage. Close enough to see the desperation behind her threats. You want to threaten me? Fine. I've been threatened by people scarier than you. I've been beaten down by systems more powerful than your family. I've lost everything. My career, my wife, my savings, my reputation. I've been so broke I couldn't afford to feed my daughter breakfast. He leaned closer. But I'm still standing. And you know why? Because I have something you'll never understand. I have something worth fighting for. What? Victoria spat. Your pathetic sense of justice? Your moral superiority? My daughter. Marcus's voice was quiet but steel hard. My daughter who drew me a picture of fighting a dragon. My daughter who believes her father is a hero. My daughter who is watching the stars right now, waiting for me to come get her. He stepped back. You threatened her. You sent Cross to frighten me with her name, her school, her age. You thought it would make me run away. It should have. Instead, it reminded me what I was fighting for. Marcus shook his head. You never understood, Victoria. Money can't buy what I have. Power can't destroy it. You've spent your whole life crushing people because you're empty inside, and you thought if you made everyone else smaller, you'd feel bigger. Victoria's lips trembled. For one instant, her mask cracked, and Marcus saw something underneath. Not evil, but emptiness. A void that no amount of wealth or cruelty had ever been able to fill. You don't know anything about me, she whispered. I know you're alone. I know you're scared. And I know that right now, in this moment, you have a choice. Marcus held her gaze. You can fight this. You can lawyer up, drag it through courts for years, destroy your health and whatever's left of your soul trying to escape consequences. Or you can accept what's happening, cooperate, maybe find some peace. Peace? Victoria laughed bitterly. You think I want peace? I think you've never had it. I think you don't even know what it feels like. Marcus paused. That's the saddest thing I've ever seen. For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. The sirens were closer now. Red and blue lights strobed against the concrete walls. Then her shoulders sagged. The fight went out of her like air from a punctured balloon. She suddenly looked smaller, older, almost fragile in her golden dress. I hate you, she said softly. I know. I hate that you're right. I hate that some nobody waiter from the back alley of a restaurant just dismantled everything my family spent generations building. I'm not a nobody, Marcus said. I'm a father. I'm an accountant. And I'm the man who pays attention. Police cars screeched to a halt at the loading dock entrance. Officers poured out, weapons drawn. Agent Torres was among them, her badge catching the light. Victoria Blackwell, Torres called out. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, bribery, and endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. Two officers moved forward with handcuffs. Victoria held out her wrists without resistance. As they led her away, she looked back at Marcus one last time. You'll regret this, she said. But there was no heat in her voice anymore, just exhaustion. Maybe, Marcus replied, but I doubt it. The next few hours were a blur. Marcus spent most of them in an FBI field office, giving statements, signing documents, explaining everything he had found. The ledger, the shipping records, the engineering analysis, the threat to the offshore workers. Alexander was there too, in a separate interview room. Their eyes met through the glass partition at one point. Alexander nodded once. Marcus nodded back. Cross proved true to his word. He handed over recordings, emails, documents, a treasure trove of evidence that made the FBI agent's eyes widen with each new revelation. The Kensington Empire wasn't just corrupt. It was rotten to the core. By 3 a.m, Richard Kensington had been formally charged with 17 counts of fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Victoria faced 12 counts of her own, including accessory to endangerment. Their lawyers were already filing motions. The legal battle would take years. But the core truth was undeniable. The ledger was real. The fraud was documented. The substandard steel had been stopped before it could kill anyone. It was over. Marcus sat alone in an empty conference room, nursing a cold cup of coffee. His borrowed suit was wrinkled. His eyes burned with exhaustion. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Peace. "You look terrible." He looked up. Alexander stood in the doorway, equally disheveled. "You're one to talk." Alexander smiled tiredly and sat down across from him. "I just got off the phone with my lawyers. The merger is dead, obviously. We'll have to find new suppliers, rebuild relationships, restructure half the company." "Sounds expensive." "It will be. We might have to downsize, cut some projects." Alexander paused. "But no one is going to die on a maintenance platform because I was too blind to see what was happening. That's worth any price." Marcus nodded slowly. "What about Victoria? What about her? You were engaged to her. You lived with her. That has to, I don't know, mean something." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "I thought I loved her once. Or maybe I just loved the idea of her. The partnership, the power, the simplicity of having everything planned out." He shook his head. "But you can't love someone who doesn't have room for love. Victoria only had room for conquest. I was just another territory she wanted to claim." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You freed me." Alexander met his eyes. "That's what you did tonight, Marcus. You didn't just catch criminals or stop fraud. You freed me from a prison I didn't even know I was in." Marcus thought about his own prison. The 3 years of invisibility, the grinding poverty, the constant fear. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know something about prisons." The sun was coming up by the time Marcus left the FBI office. Pink and gold light painted the Manhattan skyline. The city was stirring, millions of people starting their days, unaware of what had happened in the night. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister. "Lily's asking when you're coming. She says the dragon must be dead by now." Marcus smiled. He typed back, "Tell her I'm on my way." He found a cab and gave the driver his sister's address in Jersey. Then he leaned his head against the window and watched the city slide by. He thought about everything that had happened since that night at the Obsidian. The wine spill, the confrontation, the offer in the alley. He thought about Victoria's threats and Cross's betrayal and the cold darkness of the basement. He thought about Margaret, the accountant who had kept those shipping logs hidden for years, waiting for someone brave enough to use them. He thought about all the people Victoria had crushed over the years, all the careers she had destroyed, all the lives she had ruined. They weren't invisible anymore. Their suffering hadn't been in vain. The truth had come out. The dragon was dead. The drive took longer than expected. Morning traffic, construction delays. Marcus didn't mind. He used the time to think about what came next. Alexander had offered him a permanent position, Chief Compliance Officer of Sterling Industries, a corner office, a real salary, a chance to rebuild his career. Marcus hadn't given him an answer yet. Part of him wanted to accept, to prove to everyone who had blacklisted him, who had called him a troublemaker, who had said he was unemployable.
to prove to all of them that they were wrong. But another part of him just wanted to rest, to spend time with Lily, to be a father instead of a warrior. Maybe he could do both. Maybe that was the lesson in all of this. You didn't have to choose between being a good person and being successful. You didn't have to sacrifice your principles to provide for your family. You didn't have to stay invisible to stay safe. You could stand up. You could speak truth. You could fight dragons. And if you were very lucky, you could win. The cab pulled up to his sister's house just before 9 in the morning. Marcus paid the driver and stepped out into the crisp Jersey air. He hadn't even reached the front porch when the door flew open. "Daddy!" Lily came running out like a small hurricane, still in her pajamas, her braids flying behind her. She launched herself at Marcus with so much force he nearly fell over. "You came back! You came back!" Marcus held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling her small arms wrapped around his neck with fierce strength. "I told you I would, baby. Daddy always keeps his promises." "Did you beat the dragon?" "I beat the dragon." Lily pulled back, her eyes wide. "For real? The dragon is dead?" "For real." Marcus kissed her forehead. "The dragon is never going to hurt anyone again." Lily's face split into the biggest smile he had ever seen. She hugged him again, squeezing with all her 8-year-old might. "I knew it. I knew you would win, because you're the bravest person in the whole world." Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. He didn't try to stop them. "I'm not that brave, baby." "Yes, you are." Lily pulled back again, her expression serious. "Mrs. Patterson says brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're scared. And you always do the right thing, Daddy. Always." Marcus looked at his daughter, at her bright eyes and her gap-toothed smile, and her absolute certainty that her father was a hero. She was the reason he had kept going, the reason he hadn't given up when Victoria threatened him, the reason he had walked into that gala knowing he might not walk out. She was his reason for everything. "Come on," Marcus said, standing up and taking her hand. "Let's get you some breakfast. I'm thinking pancakes." "With chocolate chips?" "With extra chocolate chips." "And whipped cream?" "Don't push your luck, kid." Lily laughed and dragged him toward the house. 6 months later, the trial concluded. Richard Kensington was found guilty on all 17 counts. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in federal prison. He would die behind bars. Victoria Blackwell pleaded guilty to 8 of her 12 charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. 12 years. She would be in her 50s when she got out. Her empire gone, her fortune confiscated, her name synonymous with fraud. Cross testified for the prosecution and received immunity for his cooperation. He disappeared into private security work somewhere in the Midwest. Marcus never heard from him again. Margaret, the accountant who had kept those shipping logs, was promoted to senior financial officer at Sterling Industries. She sent Marcus a bottle of wine with a note that said simply, "Thank you for being braver than I was." And Marcus Johnson became chief compliance officer of one of the largest clean energy companies in America. His corner office looked out over Central Park. His salary was more than he had ever earned at Miller & Ross. His reputation, once destroyed, was now restored, and then some. The financial press called him a hero. The forensic accounting community treated him like a legend. Job offers flooded his inbox from firms that had blacklisted him just 3 years earlier. He turned them all down. Sterling Industries was where he belonged. With Alexander, who had become not just a colleague, but a friend. With the mission of building clean energy without cutting corners or endangering workers. with the knowledge that his work mattered. But the best part of Marcus's new life wasn't the office, or the salary, or the reputation. It was the afternoons. Alexander had agreed to flexible hours. Every day at 3:30, Marcus left the tower and drove to Jefferson Elementary School. He parked in the pickup lane and waited until the doors opened and kids came pouring out. And every day, Lily ran toward his car with the same joy she had shown that morning in Jersey. Like she couldn't quite believe her luck. Like having a father who showed up was still the greatest gift in the world.
Daddy, guess what?
What, baby?
I got an A+ on my science project, the one about wind turbines.
Marcus laughed. Wind turbines, huh? Wonder where you got that idea.
Mr. Sterling sent us a model. It actually spins when you blow on it.
Lily climbed into the back seat and buckled her seatbelt.
Can we get ice cream to celebrate?
It's 40 degrees outside.
So? Ice cream doesn't have a temperature rule.
Marcus looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror. She was grinning at him with that irresistible 8-year-old confidence. Fine. 1 scoop.
2 scoops.
1.5.
Deal.
They drove through the city, past Sterling Tower, past the Obsidian, past all the places where Marcus had been invisible for so long. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was a father, a professional, a man who had stood up when everyone expected him to bow down. And he was happy. That night, after homework was done and dinner was eaten, and Lily was tucked into bed, Marcus sat in his small apartment and looked at the picture still taped to his refrigerator. A crayon drawing of a tall brown figure in a cape, standing over a fallen dragon. Underneath, in wobbly 8-year-old handwriting, Daddy the hero. He had beaten the dragon. He had saved the workers who would have died on those turbine platforms. He had exposed a fraud that had stolen millions from honest people. But more than that, he had shown his daughter what it meant to be brave, to stand up for what was right, even when it cost everything, to refuse to be invisible. That was the real victory, not the trial or the job or the money. The real victory was knowing that Lily would grow up believing in heroes, believing in justice, believing that one person could make a difference. Marcus looked at the drawing one more time. Then he turned off the light and went to bed. Outside his window, the city hummed with life. Millions of people living their stories, fighting their battles, raising their children. And somewhere in that city, in offices and boardrooms and back alleys, there were people paying attention to the numbers. People who saw discrepancies and asked questions. People who refused to look away from uncomfortable truths. Marcus had shown them it was possible. You could fight. You could win. You could beat the dragon and still make it home for dinner. That was his legacy. Not the headlines or the court transcripts or the legal precedents. His legacy was the next Marcus Johnson. The next person who would notice something wrong and have the courage to speak up. The next invisible nobody who would turn out to be exactly the right person in exactly the right place. The match had been struck. The fire was spreading. And Marcus Johnson, the single father who had once served champagne to people who never saw him, had lit it. 2 years had passed since the night at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. 2 years since Victoria Blackwell was led away in handcuffs. 2 years since Marcus Johnson stopped being invisible. The world had moved on, as it always does. New scandals replaced old ones. New villains rose and fell. The Kensington name faded from headlines, becoming just another cautionary tale told in business schools and ethics seminars. But for Marcus, every day was a reminder of how far he had come. He stood at the window of his new apartment, a real apartment now, with 2 bedrooms and a view of the Hudson River, and watched the sun rise over Manhattan. His coffee was hot. His suit was pressed, and in the next room,
His daughter was getting ready for school.
"Daddy, I can't find my other shoe."
"Did you check under the bed?" A pause. Then,
"Oh, found it."
Marcus smiled. Some things never changed. Lily was 10 now, all legs and opinions and fierce intelligence. She had her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn streak, though Marcus never told her that part. She had stopped asking about her mother a year ago. Maybe she sensed that some questions didn't have good answers.
"Daddy, can we get breakfast on the way? I want a bagel."
"We have bagels here."
"But the ones from the cart are better. They have more cream cheese."
"That's because they don't care about your arteries." Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was wearing the MIT sweatshirt Alexander had given her for her birthday, the one that was still 2 sizes too big.
"Please, I got an A on my math test."
"You always get A's on your math tests, so I should be rewarded for consistency." Marcus laughed. She was too smart for her own good, this kid. Too smart and too brave and too much like him. "Fine, 1 bagel, but you're eating fruit when you get home."
"Deal."
They walked out together into the morning air. The city was waking up around them. Delivery trucks rumbling past, joggers dodging pedestrians, the eternal symphony of car horns and construction noise. Marcus remembered a time when this city had felt like a prison, when every street corner reminded him of what he had lost, when the towers of Manhattan seemed designed to make him feel small. Now they just felt like home.
"Daddy?"
"Yeah, baby?"
"Tommy Martinez said his dad saw you on TV last week, on that news show."
"Did he?"
"Yeah. Tommy said you looked weird. I told him you always look weird."
"Thanks for defending my honor." Lily grinned.
"He also said his dad thinks you're a hero. Is that true?"
Marcus stopped walking. They were at the corner of 57th and 8th, surrounded by the rush of morning commuters. No one was paying attention to them. No one cared about the black man in the nice suit and the little girl with the too big sweatshirt. But Lily was looking up at him with those serious eyes, waiting for an answer. "I don't know if I'm a hero," Marcus said carefully. "I just did what I thought was right."
"That's what heroes do."
"Maybe. But heroes in movies don't get scared. They don't make mistakes. They always know exactly what to do." Marcus knelt down, so he was at eye level with his daughter. "I was scared all the time, Lily. I made lots of mistakes. Half the time, I had no idea what I was doing."
"But you did it anyway."
"Yeah, I did it anyway." Lily considered this for a moment. Then she shrugged.
"That sounds like a hero to me."
She walked ahead to the bagel cart, leaving Marcus kneeling on the sidewalk with something thick in his throat. 10 years old. She was 10 years old, and she understood courage better than most adults he had ever met. He stood up and followed her, blinking against the brightness of the morning sun. The Sterling Industries annual gala was a different affair now. Gone were the days of excess and intimidation. Alexander had transformed the event into something meaningful. A celebration of clean energy, a showcase for young engineers, a fundraiser for workforce development programs. And this year, Marcus was the keynote speaker. "You nervous?" Alexander found him backstage, adjusting his tie for the 15th time. The tech billionaire looked relaxed in his tuxedo, a far cry from the haunted man Marcus had met in a rainy alley 2 years ago. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "There are 500 people out there." 512. We had some last-minute additions, Alexander smiled, including Margaret from accounting. She wanted to see you speak. "Great, no pressure." "You'll be fine. Just tell them what you told me that night at the Obsidian." "I told you to leave me alone." After that, Marcus thought back to that conversation. The rain, the business card, the impossible offer that had changed everything. I told you I needed the job because my daughter needed me to be something more than I had become.
Exactly.
Alexander put a hand on his shoulder.
That's what they need to hear. Not statistics or corporate jargon. They need to hear about a man who stood up because his daughter believed in him.
That's personal.
That's powerful. Alexander squeezed his shoulder once, then let go. You've got this, Marcus. You've faced scarier rooms than this one.
Have I?
You faced Victoria Blackwell in a basement with no lights and no weapons.
I had a metal bracket.
My point stands. Alexander stepped back. Go tell your story. The real one. That's all anyone wants to hear.
The applause when Marcus took the stage was polite but distant. 500 faces looked up at him, most of them white, most of them wealthy, most of them wondering why the chief compliance officer was giving the keynote instead of the CEO. Marcus gripped the podium and looked out at the crowd. He saw Margaret near the front, her gray hair pulled back in the same practical ponytail. He saw board members and investors and journalists. He saw the faces of people who had probably never worried about feeding their children or paying rent. And then, in the back of the room, he saw Lily. She was sitting with Alexander's assistant, dressed in her best church clothes. She gave him a small wave and the thumbs up. Marcus took a breath. 2 years ago, he began, I was a waiter at a club called the Obsidian. I made $9 an hour plus tips. I had $47 in my bank account and a daughter who thought I was a superhero. The room went quiet. This wasn't the speech they were expecting. Before that, I was a forensic accountant, top of my class at Columbia. I worked at one of the biggest firms in New York. I had a corner office, a 6-figure salary, and a future that looked like it was made of gold. Marcus paused. Then I found a fraud. $18 billion hidden in offshore accounts. I reported it, thinking I was doing the right thing, thinking the truth mattered. He let out a small laugh. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. But I wasn't wrong about that. The truth does matter. It's just that sometimes the truth costs you everything. He told them about being blacklisted, about watching his career disappear, about his wife leaving and his savings draining, and the long, slow slide into invisibility. I spent 3 years being nobody, Marcus said. 3 years carrying trays and keeping my head down and trying not to feel anything. I told myself I was being smart, protecting my daughter, surviving. He looked at Lily again. She was watching him with those serious eyes. But I wasn't surviving. I was disappearing. Every day I didn't stand up for something, I lost a little piece of myself. Every day I pretended to be less than I was, I became less than I was. The room was completely silent now. Then I met Alexander Sterling, and he offered me a chance to be more. Not because he needed a hero. He needed someone who paid attention. Someone who wasn't afraid to see what was really happening. Someone who still believed that the truth was worth fighting for. Marcus stepped out from behind the podium. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I was brave. I was terrified every single day. When Victoria Blackwell threatened my daughter, I wanted to run. When her security chief hunted me in a dark basement, I wanted to hide. When I walked into that gala, knowing I might be arrested or worse, I wanted to disappear. He looked at the crowd, meeting their eyes one by one. But I thought about my daughter, about the picture she drew of me fighting a dragon, about the way she looked at me like I was the strongest person in the world. His voice cracked slightly. I couldn't let her be wrong. I couldn't let her grow up thinking her father was a coward. Marcus took another breath. So I fought, not because I wasn't scared, but because I was more scared of failing her than I was of failing myself. He walked to the edge of the stage. That's what I want you to take from tonight. Not that I'm special. I'm not. I'm just a father who loves his daughter. But that love, that ordinary, everyday, nothing special love, that's what gave me the courage to stand up. That's what gave me the strength to keep going when everything told me to quit. He looked at Lily one more time. You don't have to be a hero to do heroic things. You just have to have something worth fighting for. And if you're lucky enough to have that, a child, a principle, a dream, then you have everything you need. Marcus stepped back. Thank you. For a moment, silence. Then Margaret stood up. She started clapping, slow and deliberate. Alexander stood up next. Then the board members. Then the journalists. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. The applause was thunderous, echoing off the walls, washing over Marcus like a wave. But he wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at his daughter, who was clapping harder than anyone, her face shining with tears and pride. After the gala, Marcus found Lily waiting for him by the coat check. "That was so cool," she said, bouncing on her heels. "Everyone was crying, even that grumpy guy with a mustache." "Mr. Henderson? He's not grumpy. He just has resting stern face." "He was definitely crying." Lily grabbed his hand. "Can we go home now? I'm tired, and this dress is itchy." "Sure, baby. Let's go home." They walked out into the night together. The city sparkled around them, a million lights against the darkness.
Daddy?
"Yeah?"
That stuff you said, about being scared but doing it anyway, was that really true?
"Every word."
Even when you went to that museum party? You were scared?
Terrified. Lily was quiet for a moment.
I get scared sometimes too, she said finally. Like when Tommy Martinez makes fun of my hair. Or when I have to give presentations in class. Or when I think about Mom.
Marcus stopped walking. He knelt down in front of his daughter, right there on the sidewalk, not caring who saw. "What about Mom?" Lily's eyes were wet.
Sometimes I'm scared she left because of me. Because I wasn't good enough.
The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He pulled Lily into a tight hug, holding her against his chest. "Listen to me. Your mother didn't leave because of you. She left because she wasn't strong enough. The same way I wasn't strong enough for a while. But that was never, ever about you."
Then why?
Sometimes people break, Lily, not because they're bad, but because they're tired. Your mom got tired. She couldn't handle what was happening to our family. That's not your fault. That's not anyone's fault. It just is. He pulled back and looked at her. But I'm still here. I will always be here. No matter how scared I get, no matter how hard things are, I will never leave you. Do you understand? Lily nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand.
I understand.
Good. Marcus stood up and took her hand. Now let's go home and get you out of that itchy dress.
Can we have hot chocolate?
It's almost midnight.
So? Hot chocolate doesn't have a time rule.
Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, full and warm, echoing through the quiet streets. Fine. 1 cup.
With marshmallows?
Don't push your luck, kid. They walked home together, hand in hand, two people who had found their way through the darkness and come out the other side. The letter arrived 6 months after the gala. Marcus found it in his mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon, a plain white envelope with a prison return address. He almost threw it away without opening it, but something made him stop. He sat down on his couch and tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in elegant script. Mr. Johnson, I have written this letter 17 times. Each version was angrier than the last. I wanted to blame you for everything.
for my imprisonment, for my father's death, for the destruction of my family's legacy. But I have had a great deal of time to think, time I never had when I was free. And I have come to realize something that I wish I had understood years ago. You were right. I was empty. I filled that emptiness with power, with cruelty, with the destruction of anyone who threatened my fragile sense of control. I told myself I was strong. I told myself I was a winner.
But I was just a frightened child in a woman's body, lashing out at a world that never gave me what I truly needed. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I threatened your daughter. I tried to destroy your life. I would have let people die to protect my profits. But I wanted you to know that your words at the loading dock stayed with me, about having something worth fighting for, about love. I never had that. I never will. But perhaps, in some small way, knowing that it exists, that someone like you can find meaning in protecting something other than themselves, perhaps that knowledge is enough. I am told you are doing well, that your daughter is thriving, that you have become something of a symbol. I am glad. Truly. You were never invisible, Mr. Johnson. I just refused to see you. Victoria Blackwell. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, placed it in his desk drawer, and went to pick up Lily from school. He never wrote back. But he never threw the letter away either. Some things deserve to be remembered, even the painful ones. The years passed, as years do. Lily turned 12, then 14, then 16. She grew tall and strong and fierce, with her father's sharp mind and her own unbreakable spirit. She became captain of her debate team. She volunteered at homeless shelters on weekends. She wrote a paper about corporate ethics that won a national competition. And every night, no matter how busy she was, she sat down for dinner with her father. "You're thinking about it again," Lily said one evening, watching Marcus stare out the window at the city lights. "Thinking about what?" "The past. You get this look on your face, like you're somewhere else." Marcus turned to her. She was almost as tall as him now, with her hair in neat braids and the Columbia sweatshirt. Her first-choice school, the same place he had studied, draped over her shoulders. "I was thinking about how far we've come," he said. "About that apartment we used to live in. The one with the broken heater and the mice in the walls. I remember. You used to put extra blankets on my bed and pretend it was a camping adventure." "You knew?" "Dad, I was 8, not stupid." Lily smiled. "I knew we were poor. I knew you were struggling. But I also knew you were doing everything you could to protect me. That's what mattered." Marcus felt his eyes sting. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." Lily stood up and hugged him. "I'm proud of you, Dad. Not because of the job, or the money, or the speeches. I'm proud of you because you never gave up, even when it would have been easier." "I couldn't give up. I had you to fight for. And now I have you to fight for." Lily pulled back and looked at him. "That's what you taught me. That love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day. A choice to stand up even when you're scared. A choice to be brave even when it costs you." Marcus looked at his daughter, at the woman she was becoming, at the strength and courage and compassion that shone from her like light. He had worried, during those dark years, that he was failing her, that growing up poor and fatherless for long hours while he worked would break something inside her. But she wasn't broken. She was forged, like steel in a fire, like a diamond under pressure. She was his legacy, not the speeches or the trials or the headlines. Her. "I love you, Lily." "I love you too, Dad," she grinned. "Now help me with my calculus homework. These integrals are killing me." I thought you were the math genius.
Even geniuses need help sometimes.
They sat down together at the kitchen table, father and daughter, working through problems as the city hummed outside their window. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and triumphs and ordinary moments that would become extraordinary memories. Marcus didn't know what was coming. Nobody ever does. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever dragons appeared, whatever darkness fell, whatever enemies rose against them, he would face them. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he had something worth fighting for. And that made all the difference. The crayon drawing still hung on the refrigerator. A tall brown figure in a cape, standing over a fallen dragon. The words underneath, now faded with age, still visible if you looked closely. Daddy the Hero. Marcus looked at it every morning when he made coffee. It reminded him of who he had been, who he had become, who he would always try to be. Not a hero from the movies, not a man without fear, just a father who loved his daughter enough to stand up when the world told him to stay down. That was enough. That was everything. And somewhere in the city, in boardrooms and back alleys and basement offices, there were people watching. People who had seen what one ordinary man could accomplish when he refused to be invisible. People who were finding their own courage, fighting their own dragons, standing up for their own children. The match Marcus had struck was still burning, and the fire was spreading.